The night Charles Barkley looked at Draymond Green and said what everyone was whispering. The date was May 6, 2026. The setting was a cramped ESPN studio where inside the NBA was supposed to be dissecting the second-round playoff series between the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks. Draymond Green had walked in that evening to fill Shaquille O'Neal's seat, eager to show the world that his post-basketball career behind a microphone had real legs. By the time the credits rolled, the Warriors' front office was probably fielding phone calls they never expected to receive in early May. Charles Barkley did not come to play nice. He did not come to trade gentle barbs or engage in the kind of rehearsed banter that fills most sports television. He came to say something that had been rattling around the heads of NBA fans for years but somehow never escaped anyone's mouth on live television. He stared straight at Green and let it fly. "It's over for the Warriors," Barkley said, his voice carrying the kind of finality usually reserved for eulogies. "No disrespect, but it ends for every old team. You had your run, you got old, you let Klay Thompson go, you and Steph Curry are on the backside of your careers, it just passed you by." The studio temperature dropped, Ernie Johnson's eyes widened. Kenny Smith shifted in his chair. This was not a hot take, this was not clickbait. This was Charles Barkley, Hall of Famer, 1993 MVP, a man who has made a second career out of saying exactly what he thinks, telling a four-time NBA champion to his face that the dynasty was dead. But Barkley had more ammunition. "You think you're going to get healthier next year," he pressed on, "you're just going to get older." And then came the line that will be replayed for years, the one that made the entire production team hold their breath. "If you want to compete, you're going to have to leave there. If Steph wants to compete, he's going to have to leave there. That's the decision you have to make." Not a suggestion, not a hypothetical, an instruction. Barkley was telling Green that his future with the Golden State Warriors, the only NBA home he had ever known, was standing in the way of his own competitiveness. It was brutal, it was honest, and it was absolutely live. Draymond swings back and misses. Draymond Green has never been the type to absorb a punch without throwing one back. That instinct is what turned a second-round pick out of Michigan State into a four-time champion, a defensive player of the year, and one of the most unique players of his generation. So of course he fired back immediately. "I think the goal is just to not look like you in the Houston Rockets uniform," Green shot across the desk. "That's ultimately the goal for us." A jab at Barkley's twilight years in Houston, the injuries, the weight, the championship that never materialized. It was personal, sharp, and exactly the kind of retort that would have landed perfectly in a different context. But the room stayed silent. Nobody laughed, nobody jumped in to defend Green, no backup came from the panel. The silence was so complete, so uncomfortable that viewers at home could feel it through their screens. Ernie didn't crack a smile. Kenny didn't nod in agreement. The absence of support became its own statement. And that silence, more than anything Barkley said, told the real story. The next 48 hours, Barkley pouring gasoline. Within 2 days, what started as an awkward television moment had exploded into the biggest NBA media story of the year. And Charles Barkley, never one to let a fire die, kept showing up with matches. He appeared on Arizona Sports Radio with Dan Bickley and Vince Marotta, and the first words out of his mouth were cold enough to freeze coffee. "I never punch down." Then, "Draymond's a good player, we're not on the same level." Not an insult, a calibration. Barkley wasn't calling Green bad, he was drawing a line between excellent role player on championship teams and generational individual superstar. And when the resumes are placed side by side, the line looks like a canyon. Charles Barkley, 11 All-Star appearances. The 1993 MVP, one of only 4 players in NBA history to record 20,000 points, 10,000 rebounds, and 4,000 assists. Draymond Green, 4 championships, 4 All-Star nods, 1 Defensive Player of the Year trophy, 9 All-Defensive Team selections. Incredible career, Hall of Fame career, but not the same neighborhood. Then Barkley sat down with Dan Patrick on May 8 and delivered the quote that broke the internet. "If Golden State was relevant, he wouldn't be in the studio with me." Let that line echo for a moment. The Warriors weren't in the second round. They weren't in the play-in. They were at home. and Draymond Green was sitting behind a desk, filling in for Shaq, debating his future with a retired Hall of Famer instead of preparing for a playoff game. Barkley had captured an entire era's epitaph in 12 words. He wasn't finished. "Old people don't get healthy," Barkley said, the words landing like a hammer on glass. "Old people die." The phrasing shocked some viewers, but the meaning was undeniable. Aging NBA stars do not magically reverse time. Expecting Steph Curry and Draymond Green to get healthier, faster, and more dominant as they push into their late 30s isn't hope, it's hallucination. Barkley also tore apart the notion that play-in appearances count as relevance. "The Warriors haven't been relevant for 3 or 4 years," he argued. "They've been in the play-in. When you're in the play-in, you're not in the playoffs." The cavalry arrives. Dan Patrick and Nick Wright join the fray. The most revealing part of this entire saga wasn't Barkley's initial outburst. It was how quickly the rest of sports media lined up behind him, forming a wall of support that left Green isolated and exposed. Dan Patrick, a broadcaster who has seen every era of NBA television, didn't just agree with Barkley, he added layers. "Charles's bad year would be Draymond's great year," Patrick said, defending Barkley's Houston production. Then he pivoted to a warning about Green's future in broadcasting. "Here's the thing Draymond has to understand if he wants to do this for a career. He needs a sense of humor. Charles will laugh at himself before he pokes you." Shaq had to learn that too. Nick Wright, never shy about picking a side, went even further. "He is not in the same room of greatness as Charles freaking Barkley," Wright said. "Even old, out-of-shape Charles in Houston was doing work. His first year there, they made the conference finals and he was awesome." Then Wright dropped the statistical hammer that made Green's Rockets joke look foolish in retrospect. "Do you know the last time Draymond Green averaged 16 points a game?" The answer, of course, is never. Barkley averaged 16.5 points and 12.2 rebounds across his 4 seasons in Houston. Those were his washed years, and they still dwarf anything Green has ever produced offensively in his entire career. Fans stormed social media with side-by-side comparisons. The more people looked at the numbers, the more Barkley's argument shifted from trash talk to arithmetic. Green had tried to weaponize Barkley's decline, but the comparison backfired so spectacularly that it became its own story. A dynasty remembered what the Warriors used to be. To understand why Barkley's words landed like a wrecking ball, the Warriors' past needs to be fully acknowledged. Not the faded, injured play-in version of the last 3 seasons, the real Warriors, the dynasty. 2015 the first championship of the Curry era. The league had no answer for the speed, the shooting, the non-stop movement. A revolution had begun. 2016 73 wins. The greatest regular season in NBA history, and then a 3-1 finals lead blown to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. A collapse that still gets replayed every June, still haunts Warriors fans, still serves as the single most painful what-if in franchise history. Then Kevin Durant arrived, and the Warriors became unfair. Back-to-back titles in 2017 and 2018. 5 straight finals appearances from 2015 to 2019, something the league hadn't seen since the Boston Celtics dynasties of the 1960s. A 16-1 playoff run in 2017 that was as close to perfection as basketball gets. Injuries slowed them. Durant left. Klay Thompson missed 2 full seasons, but they climbed back one more time in 2022, defeating the Boston Celtics for a 4th championship in 8 years. 4 rings, 5 finals, 173-win season, a style of play that fundamentally changed how basketball is taught from youth leagues to the professional ranks. And right in the middle of it all stood Draymond Green, a 2nd-round pick, 35th overall, a player nobody expected to become anything more than a rotational piece. Instead, he became 4 championships, 4 All-Star appearances, Defensive Player of the Year, 9 All-Defensive Team selections, 2 Olympic gold medals. The defensive engine, the emotional leader, the talker, the heart, the player who made the whole machine function. But that was the past, and the past, as Barkley so bluntly noted, does not get you healthy for next season. The 2025-26 season, when hope turned to ash. The Warriors entered the 2025-26 season believing one last championship push remained in their aging legs. Jimmy Butler had been added. The The second round had been reached the previous year. Hope was not just alive, it was loud. The reality was 37 wins and 45 losses, the play-in tournament for the third straight season, and then elimination at the hands of the Phoenix Suns. The injuries were brutal. Jimmy Butler tore his ACL, season over. Steph Curry battled runner's knee issues and barely played after January. Without them, the Warriors looked nothing like the team fans remembered. The offense slowed to a crawl. The defense developed leaks. Frustration boiled over all season long, spilling onto the court into huddles and across post-game interviews. The final game of the season told the entire story in miniature. Golden State lost to Phoenix 111-96. Late in the fourth quarter, with the outcome already decided, Draymond Green delivered a hard foul on Devin Booker. Officials ruled it away from the play, a free throw for Booker. Then chaos erupted, players had to be separated, staff rushed onto the court, the crowd screamed, and Green was ejected, again. But before the ejection, there was a moment that made everyone stop. When Green fouled out, he walked to the bench and hugged Steph Curry. Then he hugged Steve Kerr. Long embraces, emotional, heavy, the kind of hugs that carry meaning beyond a single game. It looked like a goodbye. Days later, on Inside the NBA *, Barkley brought up that hug, and Draymond admitted the truth openly. "We had that hug for a reason," Green said. "We're not oblivious." The pattern that won't stop following him. The ejection against Phoenix was not an isolated incident. It was the latest chapter in a career-long library of outbursts, suspensions, and controversies that have followed Draymond Green like a shadow he cannot outrun. At least 18 ejections, the most among active NBA players, but it is not the number that stands out, it is the pattern. Christmas Day 2013, ejected for elbowing Blake Griffin in the face. Early in his career, many dismissed it as youthful aggression. The 2016 Finals, a flagrant foul on LeBron James led to a Game 5 suspension. The Warriors were leading the series 3-1. They lost the next 3 games, the first team in NBA Finals history to blow a 3-1 lead. The debate over that suspension has never fully quieted. October 2022, the Jordan Poole incident, a physical altercation during training camp. Video leaked. The organization was shaken to its core. Poole was traded to Washington at the end of the season. Green later admitted on his podcast, "I effed that up." November 2023, suspended 5 games for grabbing Rudy Gobert around the neck during another heated on-court altercation. December 2023, indefinitely suspended for striking Jusuf Nurkic in the face. The league's official statement emphasized Green's repeated history of unsportsmanlike conduct. It was no longer one incident, it was a pattern the league could no longer ignore. Even Steve Kerr, who had defended Draymond through almost everything over 12 seasons, finally sounded exhausted. "He took it too far," Kerr said publicly after the Gobert incident. "He knows it's a bad look, the 5 games are deserved." For a coach who had been Green's shield for a decade, those words landed like an earthquake. Kerr had always protected Draymond from the worst of the criticism. Hearing him speak so directly, so critically, felt like a turning point that nobody wanted to acknowledge. The money, the contract, the 50-50 future. Here is where emotion meets economics, where loyalty collides with ledgers, where the warmth of 4 championships freezes against the cold reality of an aging roster. Green has 1 year remaining on his contract, including a 2026-27 player option worth approximately $27.7 million. He will be 36 years old. His 2025-26 averages, 8.4 points, 5.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists per game. His supporters will argue that his impact goes far beyond numbers: defense, leadership, communication, basketball IQ, the things that do not appear in box scores but win championships. All of that is true. His critics will argue that the Warriors are paying superstar money for a player whose role shrinks every season, whose offensive production has declined steadily, and whose controversies have cost the team far more than his defensive presence has gained. On Thursday, ClutchPoints NBA insider Brett Siegel dropped a report that sent shockwaves through the fanbase. According to Siegel, Green's chances of remaining with Golden State are essentially 50-50. His contract could become a serious trade piece this summer if the Warriors decide to reshape the roster around Stephen Curry before it is too late. Then came the quote from Green himself that broke hearts across the Bay Area. "I've never been so uncertain since early in my career," Green admitted. "I'm truly at a loss now because you just don't know what direction things will go. I hope I'm on this team next year, but we don't know that, and man, if it was, what a run it's been." Draymond Green does not talk like that. For 12 years, the assumption had been that Curry, Kerr, Clay, and Green would be tied together forever, their names etched into the same sentence of basketball history. Now that picture looks unstable for the first time. What comes next: the draft, the rumors, the replacement. The Warriors face impossible questions this offseason, the kind that general managers lose sleep over and fanbases argue about for decades. Steph Curry will be 38 years old next season. Draymond Green will be 36. Jimmy Butler will be 37. That is not a core entering its prime. That is a core looking at retirement brochures and trying to decide whether one more run is worth the risk. Steve Kerr has not officially committed to his long-term future with the organization. The coach who has been the steady hand through every championship, every collapse, every controversy, remains uncertain about his own path forward. Rumors continue to fly around the league about Golden State chasing another superstar to pair with Curry before his career ends. Names like Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James have repeatedly surfaced in speculation. If the Warriors ever attempted a blockbuster move like that, Draymond's contract would almost certainly become a major part of the conversation. And then there is the draft. In a recent 2026 NBA mock draft, Kevin O'Connor projected the Warriors to select New Zealand Breakers forward Kareem Lopez in the first round. Scouts describe Lopez as a versatile two-way player with defensive instincts and playmaking skills reminiscent of a younger Draymond Green, except taller and considered more dangerous offensively as a shooter. Whether it happens through the draft, through free agency, or through a blockbuster trade, Golden State appears to be quietly preparing for life after Draymond Green. The signs are everywhere for those willing to see them. The honesty that Barkley showed and Draymond hasn't learned yet. Here is what makes all of this sting even more: what separates Barkley's approach from Green's reaction, what Dan Patrick was trying to explain when he talked about having a sense of humor. When Barkley went on the Dan Patrick Show, he did not just defend his position. He did something Draymond has not yet learned how to do: he laughed at himself. "You know, it's so funny," Barkley said. "Last time you had me on the show, I told you I regretted those Rocket years, especially the last two where I sucked as a player." That honesty matters. Barkley knows his final seasons were not his best. He admits it openly, without defensiveness, without anger. He jokes about his own decline. He does not need anyone to pretend he was still in his prime. He has made peace with the arc of his own career. Dan Patrick made the point directly: Charles will laugh at himself before he pokes you. That's the job. That's what Draymond has to understand if he wants to do this for a living. The silence in that inside the NBA asterisk studio told the story. Draymond looked genuinely irritated, not playful, not bantering, irritated. And the more irritated he looked, the more the criticism grew. Because television audiences can sense when someone cannot take a joke, cannot absorb a punch, cannot laugh at himself. And deep down, the reality Barkley described probably hurts precisely because it feels true. The Warriors are getting older. The dynasty no longer looks untouchable. The championship window, once thrown wide open, has been slowly closing for years. And now the biggest question surrounding Draymond Green is not whether change is coming. It is whether he leaves Golden State on his own terms, walking away with his head held high and his 4 rings gleaming. Or whether the franchise eventually makes that decision for him. The final word: Barkley didn't force this, he just said it out loud. Did Charles Barkley personally walk into the Warriors' front office and demand a trade? No, that is not how NBA franchises operate. General managers do not make franchise-altering decisions because a Hall of Famer talked trash on television. But what Barkley did was something that may end up being just as powerful, just as consequential, just as irreversible. He shattered the illusion. For the last several years, the Warriors have been trying to protect something: an image, a legacy, a belief that the dynasty could somehow keep going if everyone just stayed healthy and everything broke right. Barkley looked directly at Draymond Green on live television in front of millions of viewers and said the one thing many fans, analysts, and even people around the league had been quietly thinking for a long time. The Golden State Warriors dynasty is over. Not because they cannot win another game, not because Steph Curry forgot how to shoot, not because Draymond Green suddenly became a bad player, but because dynasties do not last forever. They fade, they age, they get old, and old people do not get healthy. The Warriors built one of the greatest runs basketball has ever seen: 4 championships, 5 finals appearances, a 73-win season that still stands as the best regular season record in league history. Steph Curry changed the sport forever with his shooting. Klay Thompson became one of the most dangerous scorers the league has ever witnessed, and Draymond Green was the emotional leader and defensive engine that held the entire machine together. But dynasties end. And now the uncertainty is no longer hidden behind loyalty speeches and championship memories. It is out in the open for everyone to see. Whether Barkley intended to or not, he may have sped up a conversation the organization was trying hard to avoid. A conversation about age, about decline, about whether the dynasty can realistically continue. The Warriors still have options. They could trade him, they could restructure his deal, they could let him play out the final year of his contract, they could decide to keep the core together for one final run around Stephen Curry. But one thing has definitely changed. The relationship between Draymond Green and the Warriors is now being publicly questioned in a way it never was before. The foundation has been cracked, the conversation has started, and you cannot put that toothpaste back in the tube. The biggest question surrounding Draymond Green is no longer about his statistics or his ejections or his contract. It is about whether he leaves on his own terms, or whether the franchise eventually makes that decision for him. Either way, Charles Barkley already said the quiet part out loud, and there is no unsaying it now.